Imagine you're in the middle of a deadly fight in Jujutsu Kaisen. Your opponent is stronger, faster, and smarter than you. You're running out of cursed energy, and your attacks can't even touch them. Suddenly, they clap their hands together or make a strange sign, and in an instant, the world around you completely changes. You're no longer standing in a street or battlefield. Instead, you're trapped inside their world, a space where their cursed technique works at its absolute peak. And here's the terrifying part. Inside this space, every single one of their attacks is guaranteed to hit you, no matter how fast you move or how much you defend. It's impossible to dodge. That is the terrifying power of domain expansion, the strongest technique in Jujutsu Kaisen. Today, we're going to break it all down in easy English. By the end of this video, you'll understand what domain expansion really is, the different types of domains, the weaknesses of using it, how it can be countered, and finally, we'll go through every domain expansion we've seen so far in Jujutsu Kaisen, from Gojo's terrifying Unlimited Void to Hakari's insanely complicated Idle Death Gamble. So grab a snack, because this is going to be a deep dive into one of the coolest and most dangerous abilities in all of anime. What exactly is domain expansion? Domain expansion is considered the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery. Think of it as a sorcerer's ultimate move, the strongest ability they can pull out in battle. Here's how it works. Every sorcerer has what's called an innate domain, which is basically a mental space tied to their cursed technique. When they use domain expansion, they project this inner space into reality, creating a separate area called a domain. This domain is then filled with their cursed technique. Inside this domain, their technique doesn't just get stronger, it becomes perfect. Attacks inside the domain gain a special rule called the sure hit effect. That means if they use their cursed technique on you inside the domain, it's impossible to miss. You will get hit. To activate a domain, sorcerers usually need a unique hand sign or signal, almost like a signature move. Sounds unstoppable, right? Well, it kind of is. But before we talk about counters, let's first go over the types of domains. Types of domains. There are three major types of domains in Jujutsu Kaisen. 1. Lethal domains. These are the deadly ones. The barrier is completely infused with the user's cursed technique, and every single attack becomes unavoidable. That's why they're called lethal, because getting caught inside usually means certain death. Examples: Jogo's Coffin of the Iron Mountain, where his lava attacks can't miss. Gojo's Unlimited Void, which overwhelms the mind with infinite knowledge. Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine, which slashes apart everything in range. The catch is, to create a lethal domain, the sorcerer needs to be skilled enough to both form a complete barrier and infuse it with their cursed technique. Not everyone can do this. For example, Megumi Fushiguro can't yet form a complete lethal domain because he struggles to create a fully enclosed barrier. That's why his domain doesn't have a guaranteed hit. Interestingly, Sukuna and Kenjaku are exceptions. They can create lethal domains without an outer shell. Even though their domains don't have a closed barrier, their attacks still retain a guaranteed hit. That makes them insanely broken compared to others. 2. Non-lethal domains. In the past, domains weren't always meant to kill. Instead, they were created to enforce the rules of a cursed technique. Inside these domains, the sorcerer forces the opponent to play by their technique's rules, whether they like it or not. Example: Higurama's Deadly Sentencing. Inside his domain, he forces opponents to stand trial in a courtroom. No violence is allowed. Instead, both sides must follow the rules of the court, with judgment acting as the judge. It's not about raw power, it's about binding the opponent to a system of rules. Non-lethal domains were common in older times, but as sorcerers developed more lethal techniques, non-lethal ones became rare. 3. Incomplete domains. These happen when a sorcerer tries to expand their domain using only cursed energy, but without properly embedding their cursed technique. They might form a space, but it's not polished. Example: Megumi's Chimera Shadow Garden. While it's powerful, it's incomplete, which is why it doesn't guarantee hits the same way a lethal domain does. Drawbacks of domain expansion. Domain expansion sounds like the perfect weapon, but of course, there are weaknesses. Huge energy cost. Casting a domain requires an enormous amount of cursed energy. It's not something sorcerers can spam. Temporary weakness. After using a domain, a sorcerer's cursed technique becomes unstable for a short time. If they try to use their technique right after, it may fail. Rarity, very few sorcerers can use it more than once per day. The only exceptions are Satoru Gojo and Ryomen Sukuna, who can cast theirs multiple times. Kinji Hakari can also manage it, but only if his domain jackpot ability activates. So while it's incredibly powerful, it's also risky. Use it at the wrong time, and you might be left wide open. How to counter a domain expansion? You might be wondering if a domain guarantees a hit. How do you fight against it? Well, there are 4 main ways we've seen so far in the story. 1. Anti-domain Technoquester, or for important anti-domain moves. Simple domain, a small barrier around yourself that blocks a domain's sure hit effect. It doesn't erase the technique itself, but it buys time. Strong domains can break it in seconds though. Hollow Wicker Basket, an older version of simple domain. It cancels the barrier but not the cursed technique, which makes it weaker overall. Falling Blossom Emotion, a rare move passed down in the big 3 sorcerer clans. Instead of creating a new barrier, the user coats themselves in cursed energy. Whenever a domain attack hits, the energy automatically counters with equal force. It doesn't stop physical blows, though. Domain Amplification, the user spreads their domain thinly around their body like armor. It cancels the sure hit effect of other domains, and if they touch their opponent, it cancels their cursed technique too. The downside, you can't use your own cursed technique at the same time, so you're stuck with hand-to-hand fighting. 2. Breaking a knee. If you attack from outside, you can break a hole in the domain's barrier. Because the barrier is reinforced from the inside to keep people trapped, it's weaker from the outside. However, once you enter, you're still a target of the sure hit effect. Risky. 3. Breaking out. If you're trapped inside, you can try to escape by breaking through the barrier. But this is extremely rare. It requires insane cursed energy and usually only works if the opponent is weaker. 4. Domain Clash. This is the ultimate counter. If you expand your own domain at the same time, the 2 domains clash. The more refined domain takes over. For example, Gojo's Unlimited Void instantly crushed Jogo's Coffin of the Iron Mountain. Dagon's domain slowly overpowered Megumi's Incomplete Domain. When domains clash, sure hit effects cancel each other out, making it more about skill and endurance. Every domain expansion we've seen in Jujutsu Kaisen. Alright, now that we know how domains work, let's break down every single domain expansion we've seen so far. Mahito, self-embodiment of perfection. Mato forms his domain using creepy little hands inside his mouth. Inside, the target is surrounded by giant hands forming a flower shape. His technique, Idol Transfiguration, becomes unavoidable. This means he can touch and reshape a target's soul instantly. Nanami once described being inside Mahito's domain as literally being in the palm of his hand. Almost unbeatable except when Yuji entered and Mahito accidentally touched Sukuna's soul, which backfired horribly. Jogo, Coffin of the Iron Mountain. Jogo's domain looks like the inside of a volcano. Magma erupts everywhere, and the heat alone can kill average sorcerers. His lava attacks can't miss inside. Unfortunately for him, when he used it against Gojo, Unlimited Void completely overpowered it in seconds. Gojo Satoru, Unlimited Voidone of the most terrifying domains. Inside, the target's mind is flooded with infinite knowledge. They can see and feel everything, but also nothing at the same time. Their brain is overloaded, leaving them paralyzed and defenseless. This domain is almost always instant victory. Dagon, Horizon of the captivating Skandhafis domain, looks like a peaceful tropical beach, but don't be fooled. Dagon's Shikigami fish spawn out of nowhere and devour the target's flesh instantly. They're impossible to block because they only exist when they hit you. Megumi Fushiguro, Khmer Shadow Garden. Megumi's incomplete domain fills the area with a sea of shadows. He can summon multiple Shikigami at once and manipulate the shadows to trap opponents. Anyone standing on the shadows risks being pulled down into an endless abyss. It's incomplete, but still very dangerous. Higuruma, deadly sentencing. This non-lethal domain creates a courtroom. Higuruma is the prosecutor, and the opponent is the defendant. Both sides must follow trial rules, with the Shikigami judgment acting as judge. If the opponent is found guilty, judgment gives a punishment. We've seen confiscation removes the opponent's cursed technique or cursed energy if they don't have one. Confiscation plus death penalty gives Higuruma an executioner's sword, which kills in one blow. Kenjaku, Wumpu Fujuon Kenjis domain, is one of the rare barrierless lethal domains. It forms a giant tower of cursed spirit faces that fire devastating blasts. Even Yuki, a special grade sorcerer, couldn't withstand it. It's refined enough to easily strip away anti-domain defenses. Sukuna, Malevolent Trinev King of Curses, has a domain that covers a massive 200-meter radius without a barrier. Inside, Sukuna uses two types of slashes, cleave, adjusts, to cut through targets with cursed energy, dismantle, used for objects or beings without cursed energy. Everything inside is cut apart until nothing remains. Truly terrifying. Naoya Zenin, Time Cell Moon Palisanaya's domain is based on his clan's projection sorcery. It forces targets to move at 24 frames per second, like an animation. If they break the rule, they suffer countless bloody injuries. The technique even cuts at the cellular level, leaving opponents immobilized or worse. Kenji Hakari, Idle Death Gamble Akari's domain is by far the most complicated. It's based on a pachinko machine with a theme song called Private Pure Love Train. When activated, the rules of the pachinko game are transferred to the target's brain through the sure hit effect. Hakari spins the pachinko for jackpots. If he lands one, he gains immortality for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, during which his body automatically heals from any injury, even fatal ones. As long as he keeps hitting jackpots, he can keep looping this effect, essentially making him unkillable. Conclusion: why domain expansion is so important? Domain expansion isn't just a flashy ability, it represents the peak of a sorcerer's power. It's the ultimate move where strategy, cursed energy, and mastery of technique all come together. Some domains are beautiful, some are horrifying, and some are just plain unfair. But one thing is clear: whoever controls the domain usually controls the fight. So the next time you watch Jujutsu Kaisen, pay attention whenever someone activates a domain. Because from that moment on, the entire battle changes.